Look, will you be absolutely genuine with me? No deception, please. I want you to do something that expresses you without the slightest deception.
All right, guys, welcome back. Episode 11, Genuity. Great to have everybody here. We have a really special guest, Brandon Epstein. This is a gentleman who we've been following each other on social media now for a little bit of time. I've gotten to do a little bit of research on his background. I read his book. What he does is very interesting. He utilizes visualization and manifestation to help you achieve your highest level of goals and ultimately your optimized self. So we brought him on. We want to dive into what he does, tap into the tools that he utilizes, and how he winds up making the athletes and the top level executives that he deals with their lives better, and how they can attain the goals that they've been looking for and trying to reach their entire life. So Brandon, thank you. Great to have you on. Good to meet you.
Bros, thank you so much for having me. It's an honor, and I can't wait to see what we get into today.
Awesome. So we always like to start with where you came from, your background, how you got into what you're doing now. Has this always been something in your tool chest that you've liked to use when you were an athlete? How did you get from A to Z? How did you wind up in the position that you are to where you're writing books and dealing with these athletes? So bring us right back to the beginning as to how this all started.
I'll start a little bit of the genesis story. You know, I played football in high school, made the leap into playing college ball, thought I would just walk on the team, be a starter, ball out, and I rode the bench my freshman year. And so after that, I was like, this isn't fun. I'm going to practice. I'm not playing in games. I'm not even getting that many reps in practice. I'm on the practice squad. Like, it's not fun. So in the offseason, I went looking for a solution. I was already pretty dialed with my workouts, my nutrition. I was a nerd for all that stuff, you know, very early on. I was looking for the magic pill. I literally went home and I went into a supplement shop and I was looking for some supplement that was going to help me become bigger, faster, stronger, get in the field. And funny enough, the owner of this supplement shop was a real life mystic. He was a dude who, although he was a jack, 5'6", 240-pound bodybuilder, he was studying neuroscience. He had studied all different modalities around meditation, energy training, working with Eastern medicine from the chakras and the meridians, and really just how do you use that inner world to create an external performance. And so he started immediately taking me down this rabbit hole of understanding my inner world. And at that point, this was never talked about. There was no sports psychologist on my college football team. I'd never heard any term around mental health, anxiety, whatever. And he just made me turn inward and actually acknowledge what it felt like to be me in the present moment. That was a little bit of my first awakening to even have that type of awareness. And present day, it seems very obvious, but at that time, for me as an 18-year-old, it was mind expanding to even ask that question, to step into awareness. What does it feel like to be me right now? And to understand that there's actually techniques that I could use to shift the way I was feeling in the present moment. And so he started to give me some of these techniques. I was a defensive end at the time. He started to show me how I could channel energy to become more explosive. And so one exercise he gave me was, he said, get into your three-point stance. I want you to try to explode through your stance and lift up one of those like old school refrigerators that has like protein drinks, pre-workouts in it. So I go through this exercise. I try to lift it off. I get maybe 1 or 2 inches off the ground. Seemed impossible. Then he teaches me this energy generating breathing technique. I do it again. I lift the thing 3 or 4 feet off the ground, and I'm like, I just like, get up, and I just feel like more powerful than I ever had before. And it kind of just breaks my brain a little bit. It's like, what do you mean? I just did some breathing techniques, and all of a sudden, I'm so much more powerful, and I'm able to do something I wasn't able to do before. So, long story short, brought that back to my football team the next year, became a starter, led the team in tackles in multiple games, defensive player of the game, balled out. Not only that, though, I really discovered that I had a gift for not just using these techniques for myself, but sharing with my teammates. And it wasn't good for an 18-year-old ego, but our athletic trainer called me the guru because I was helping all the guys on my team with these techniques as well. So I had like a lineup of guys before we went out to the field who wanted to work with me, doing different techniques to help reduce their pain, to help them just feel like they're getting into that flow state, all types of things like that. So from that point forward, I realized that football wasn't my main gift. It was the ability to enhance performance through the power of the mind. And I just kept going ever since. This is 15, 16 years later, and it's taken a long time, but now I'm in pro sports. I work in the NFL, I work in Major League Baseball, UFC, boxing. I've worked with Hall of Famers, Cy Young Award winning pitchers, and just getting to actually take these techniques and use them at the highest level. So that's a little bit of a long story short.
Can you explain your core philosophy on how to manifest and these types of meditation, and how they differentiate from maybe some of the other approaches that other, experts in your field might use?
So I'm mostly focused on frequency, and more the emotional frequency than necessarily a mental image you're holding in your mind. So when people talk about manifestation, like, all right, I want to imagine myself, I'm driving in a Lamborghini, and they think so much about this mental imagery. They think about affirmations. For me, everything is about the emotional frequency, not that you're living in just within some visualization or meditation, but you're able to perpetuate through your daily life. So how do you keep yourself on a high emotional frequency that's in alignment with the outcomes that you want for your life? You have to remove the subconscious resistance that pulls you down into lower frequencies. Have you guys read the book Power vs. Force?
No.
Okay. It's a book by David Hawkins, and it has this chart called the Map of Consciousness. And it's a beautiful illustration of emotional frequency. Like the lowest frequency we can live in is shame, guilt, and it just goes up through all the emotions. And the bottom half of the chart is force. It's like we're trying to force things to happen. The top half is power. So obviously the highest you can get to is enlightenment. I don't think there's anyone on earth who's there right now. Apparently we've had some people in history who've gotten there before, but that's kind of the process you want to go through. You want to bring yourself up into higher and higher emotional frequencies, because your best performance and everything you want, right? The things that you want in life are going to be in line with these high emotional states, are going to meet you in those higher frequencies. So my work is to go into someone's subconscious and recognize, okay, if your natural state is a high emotional frequency, then what are the subconscious programs you're running right now that's pulling you down out of this natural state of being in a high frequency? And so that's an auditing process that I do with people, versus a lot of people are very conscious, especially in the psychological world. You go to therapy, you go to a psychotherapist, you go to a counselor. They're trying to give you advice. They're trying to have you just kind of try to come up with it from the conscious mind alone, versus going beneath the surface and finding out, okay, what is at the subconscious level? What is the unseen? And so to get there, you're almost getting into a hypnotic state so you can access those subconscious programs. So I help uncover basically what's holding people back in those programs, and I help them rewrite that inner code so they can use it as a propulsion system, because energy can't be created or destroyed. So that same energy that holds you back will be a propulsion system to move you forward.
So you go beyond the the affirmative style of manifestation, where it's I am worthy, I am powerful, and you do more of what incantations would be, where you're actually living, breathing, feeling the exact moment that you want to embody. And I think there's a quote that I know, and I don't know who said it. He says, act as you want to be and become who you are, or something like that. So it's basically pretty much where you're putting yourself in that future moment and existing in that feeling of fulfillment, abundance, and I assume that's what you're pulling out of them. My question is, so what happens if you're dealing with somebody who has a very high level of grief and shame, and it's hard for them to pull out of that, and they ruminate in these patterns and that subconscious, because psychologically most of our autopilot system is 90% subconscious throughout the day. So how do you wind up pulling somebody out of those perseverating patterns where they just flip-flopping between anger and grief and shame and guilt, and getting them out of there? And as good as it is to say, let's put you in the moment of feeling this way, how do we do that to somebody that's so subconsciously entwined into those negative patterns?
We get them out of their head. A lot of people think the answers are in their head. You're not going to figure it out in your head. We get them into their body, because all of these emotions, let's say, shame and sadness or guilt, like those are going to live kind of in the lower stomach or in the upper stomach. They live in the energy centers of their body. Fear, we all know that feeling of like, oh, I'm afraid what's going to happen next, that nervousness, it lives in the solar plexus. So we feel that sensation physically in the body. So that's where we find it have someone close their eyes. So if someone works with me and I'm going to do my coaching work with them, their eyes are closed the whole time and they're going into the feeling sensation of the body, and they're not actually thinking about anything. They're feeling where that shame is, and I'm asking them the question, saying, I want you to feel it all the way. I want you to go into it. I want you to sit in the middle of the shit pit of the shame that you're in right now. I want you to actually go in it, sit in the middle of it, and I want you to ask yourself, what am I believing to be true in this moment that's making me feel so ashamed, right? And I just keep them right there, and I hold them there, right there in that space, right? And it's almost a psychedelic experience with someone who's had experience with that, because you're going so far just beyond what the ego wants. The ego wants to keep things in control in the head. It wants a rational story to make sense. But when you pull someone down completely into the feeling and they're sitting it, you're actually superseding the ego, and that's how you get into the subconscious. So you find it through the emotional sensation in the physical body, and you simply ask the question, what do you believe to be true that would make you feel this? And you have to hold someone in the feeling of it for them to come up with what the actual belief is. If they try to go up into their head to figure it out and come up with a story for you, that's not going to be the core of it. So a lot of my gift is being able to feel the energy in people's bodies and hold them there, but not to say people can't do this on their own. It's just a skill like anything else. We've all become very sensitized to our emotions and our energy centers, and the more we train ourselves to feel deeply into our bodies, the easier it will become to uncover that deeper rooted programming.
So, which phenomenal answer, by the way. So my question now is, how do you keep somebody there? So, you can lead a horse to water, but you can't force them to drink, right? So how, once they've achieved this feeling, and now they understand what's on the other realm of these visualizations and sitting in their grief, because I assume what you're really teaching them is the ability to stay present, which is super important, to not live in the past, and to when you're sitting with that grief, to utilize that grief and alchemize it to strength. But if, let's say, they're utilizing you, and then you have a couple sessions with them, what implementations and practices then can you offer somebody to do this on their own, who, let's say, is not an expert like you are and is leaning on you to assist them in these treatments? So how, if I'm utilizing you and you do a couple sessions with me, and in the session I'm great, I'm good, I feel great, I can see it, I can feel it, but then I leave and now I'm back in old patterns. So I'm good in the time being, and then I revert back. What do you do for people who leave you, and what type of methods do you offer them to implement on their own time?
So the work I do, if it's done correctly, it's actually permanent. So starting there, like I'll give you an example. Before I hop on with you guys, I'm watching one of my guys play. It's funny because like he's playing, my dad, we all grew up in Queens, New York, so they're playing the Mets and my guy's on the Braves, and they're competing for a playoff spot, and I'm watching them play right now. And this guy, we already did the cleanup work for him, and like he's still paying me. He paid me a retainer for the whole season, but there's nothing for me to do because the job's already done. So when you go in and you do the subconscious cleanup process, you don't have to redo it. You don't have to like check on it. Is it okay? No, the job is done. Now, does that mean you're never going to have more programming that comes up? Of course not. When you get to higher levels of success, you just find new, if you will, invisible ceilings. But it's not going to be the same stuff, right? So if someone does that work with me, it's done. The job is done. And I have a whole process around it, right? Where I'm actually going to have them cleanse themselves. We're actually cleaning it out. We call it cleaning up the inner planet, where we're going through all these subconscious programs. We're cleaning them out. We're alchemizing, like you said. We're literally reprogramming them and choosing new beliefs. And then we're doing an integration process, which anyone can do. I'm a big fan of it. Is once you go through this process, you get all these new beliefs. Okay, now are these all the things that I want to believe to be true? So people like to listen to meditation, stuff like that. I say make your own meditation. Have all your own beliefs. Record a voice memo with your voice, reading them all. Listen to it every morning when you're waking up, every night when you're going to sleep. And this is how it helps integrate this. And anyone can do this. Because what voice is in your head every single day? It's your head. It's your voice. So you want to hear your own voice, and that's how you can start to integrate and rewrite that code for yourself. And that's more of an integration. That's not the core work. That's like how you kind of like make sure it sticks afterwards. But to answer your question, once a job is done, it's done with me. Okay. And let's say someone's like, all right, I got over all my limiting beliefs around becoming a millionaire, right? And then their business keeps growing and growing and growing. And now they're like, oh man, I think I'm about to get to 10 million or 100 million. There may be new pieces of program they didn't even know were there that expand at that next level. Or maybe they're having a lot of success at the college level as an athlete and they get to the pros, there's something that gets exposed that they didn't know were there. So as we try to strive and achieve for more, which I think a lot of your listeners probably do want, they want to keep going to that next level, new things will be exposed. But my hope is if we do the work together, I'm teaching you how to fish in the process. You're understanding the process. You can do it for your own. And that's exactly why I also wrote the book, Program to Fail, that you said you read earlier. The whole second half of the book is literally a playbook that will take you step by step on how to do this for yourself. And so my goal really was to teach everyone how to fish. I can only work with a very limited amount of people. And so the book was there to show people how they can continue to do this on their own. And they're not just lost, in the world, just trying to figure it out.
What ultimate outcomes do your clients typically seek? And do you notice a difference between when you're dealing with the professional athletes to the high-level CEOs? Have you noticed that maybe the athletes are a little harder on themselves and need a little bit more deprogramming because they're in that constant state of comparison against the other athletes? Or have you noticed that maybe there's something different with the CEOs and the high-level executives that you deal with? What are the typical outcomes that your clients are looking for? And not only that, but can you share with us, like an awesome success story that maybe you have with somebody that maybe we would know, whether it's in MMA, boxing, fighting, if you're allowed to use the names?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, so a few questions there. So I would say, starting with the first question, the correlation between CEOs and pro athletes, you were dead on. Like the biggest thing that I'd say a lot of pro athletes are dealing with is the caring about what other people think of them. That's so big for these guys. Like everything from the fan base to social media to their own teammates to coaches to executives to management. Everyone's looking at them and literally judging them, and they feel it, and they're constantly trying to contend with that. And a lot of them, if they haven't been established, right, a veteran who knows that their next 10 years are already under contract, like they're always wondering, like, hey, am I going to be able to achieve all my dreams? Am I going to be able to stay in this league? Am I going to be able to sustain it? And so they're always worried about what people are thinking of them. Versus like the CEOs, I feel like they know that they're more creators of their own business and they are going to create whatever they want, right? They're kind of like writing the rules to the game. And so their results aren't as contingent on other people saying yes or no. Like they decide yes or no. So that's a big difference there, right? I'd say, I'm writing my next book right now. It's actually mostly about these patterns I see in pro athletes. But I do see correlated between all high achievers. I think you guys, we've all been through the I'm not enough phase, right? I'm not worthy. I'd say business people, by the time they get to me, they've actually dealt with a lot of that. That's how they've gotten to that next level. Athletes more so could still be dealing with it, even if they're in pro sports, because what I've seen is that people are really successful in business. They've already had to overcome so much to get there, because to be successful in business, like it isn't just like you don't get lucky. It's not about just like, oh, I was just born into this incredible talent. Now, I'm not saying professional athletes get lucky, but to some degree, some of them just are so gifted physically that they were actually able to get into the pros on that gift alone, right? They're running 4.4, they're jumping, they have a 40-inch vert, they're just, come out the womb, benching 315. Like a lot of them really are gifted in that way, and so they can get to such a high level of competition before they're actually forced to face more of their demons. Versus I think a lot of business owners, if they're able to get to that elite level, like if it was comparative to like pro sports, that would be, I don't know, someone who's making 9 figures, hundreds of millions of dollars, like that level of rarity. Like they've already been through so much that they've been forced to get over a lot of the I'm not enough. And so their issues are more so like, I don't want to say Messiah complex, but like they've been able to overcome so much that, they may find some imbalances in their life and just think they could just do whatever they want. And so maybe they're cheating on their wives, maybe they're neglecting their kids, maybe they're neglecting their physical health. And it's like those are more of those issues that those people come to me with, versus like the pro athletes seem to be dealing with more just like, how do I not deal with perfectionism, or how do I get perfectionism? How do I make sure that I'm not getting overwhelmed by other people's opinions? How am I not dealing with these, fears that are coming up? And so it's more like tactical versus like, I'd say business people, like they've actually had to overcome a lot of that to get to where they are. And now that they're there, it's more like, okay, now you're just operating from like a place of it's never going to be enough. And it's creating some issues in your life where you've got the money, you've got the career success. Now we need to find some of the balance with your health, with your relationships. So I guess that was the answer to your first question, right?
Yes.
Okay. I don't think I remember the second one. The third one was a case study. I could share one of those.
Yeah. So I don't even remember my second question.
Any success stories of a specific?
That was more the third, but yeah, success story.
Yeah.
So I'm not a big sport watcher per se. I'm more of a fighter by nature, and that's typically what I watch. So if you have anyone in that realm, boxing, MMA, professional baseball, basketball, football, anything that you can share with us. And then once you do, I kind of want to tap back into something that you said about the CEO's mindset. But I want you to share with us what you can share with us about your success stories first.
Yeah. I have a few clients that are very open. They've talked openly about it. A big one recently was Sean Brady. He's a UFC fighter out of Philly. You guys familiar with him?
Yeah, I am, yes.
Yeah. So Sean came to me. He talked about this a little bit on Rogan. It's funny because he told Rogan we just did visualization techniques. And for me, that's like the tip of the iceberg of what we did. But a lot of what I do is so deep in the subconscious that like the conscious mind doesn't really know how to explain it. So I'll do my best to do so here. So Sean came to me right when he had lost to Bilal Muhammad for the first time. It was his first loss. He was undefeated before that. And part of him was a little bit broken because this identity had been built up around believing he could not be beaten. And we've seen this happen before, right? If you guys follow boxing, we've seen this happen with someone like Deontay Wilder. Like when he lost, it literally broke his brain. Like he could not deal with it. We all saw that. Like every excuse in the books, he came up with this because when you have this belief about yourself that you can't be beaten, and then there's evidence right in front of you that you were beaten, you have two choices. Either like you completely break down and like you implode, which I feel like that's what happened to Deontay Wilder. Just like, my uniform was too heavy, or there was like weights in the gloves, and then whatever, it was my diet, or I was drugged, or whatever it was, it's every excuse. Versus Brady was actually willing to go through the ego death and be like, all right, I did lose. I guess I am beatable. And how do I overcome this? And so the work I was able to do with him was actually just take him through almost like, if you guys are familiar with like the Bufo Alvaristo, Bufo 5-MeO DMT, it's like this forced ego death. And that's more or less what I had to do with him. Are you familiar with it?
I am very familiar with the psychedelic renaissance. I am not familiar with the toad yet, but eventually that will be part of my next journey. Everything else I've encountered. That is my next.
Cool. Yeah, it's something. But I basically took him through this journey. Like we didn't do any psychedelics, but like in the session was going through this forced ego death of full acceptance. Like, yep, it really happened, and like I am beatable, and that can happen. And so what I always say is what we can't accept won't change. So that ego death, acceptance of it, and then what we resist persists. So the resisting of it was keeping it stuck in him and was causing him to just not be able to perform his best. And so we worked together in the camp. I took him through that full process of death and rebirth through that. And he's been undefeated since then. And hopefully he gets his rematch with Bilal, because I think he's going to dominate him once he does get the opportunity. Because in that fight, for example, he was a little bit fragile because he just built up, he just put so much pressure on himself to be undefeated that he was focusing on the wrong things at that point. And it was more about being undefeated instead of just being present for the fight in front of him. So Brady's one of them. Another one that's pretty cool is, actually I'm wearing his shirt right now, you can't really see it, Shane Mosley Jr. So I've worked with this guy on and off for like 7 years, and I think a lot of people know his dad, who is a Hall of Fame boxer, Shane Mosley. And Shane Mosley Jr., when I met him, this dude was living the real life Creed story. Like, I'm telling you, he never got money. When I met him, he was living on his boxing coach's couch. Like, everyone in his family didn't want him to fight, and nobody was encouraging him. No one was giving him any financial support. It was like the real life Creed story of like just grinding it out, living on couches, just figuring it all out on his own. And because he was so beat down early in life and just told, like, you know, literally, and he'll probably talk about this later on, like once he gets to bigger stage, which he's getting to now, is how many people just beat him down mentally and just said, like, you're not going to be shit. You're not going to be your dad. Can you imagine that? Like, you know, you have this dad with such an incredible legacy, and you're getting browbeaten mentally, being told you'll never be that. And it literally programmed him to believe that he never would. So before we were working together, he had a couple opportunities where he was like contender. Like, if he won the fight, he was going to get a shot at the belt, and he just showed up as a shell of himself in these fights. And we were able to connect, and once we started working together, we were able to turn everything around 180. And the first fight that I started working with him, it was against Gabriel Rosado. Now, this is pretty funny because he really is living the Creed story, because if you guys remember, Gabriel Rosado fought, like, the actual boxer. This is a boxer who fought in Creed against Michael B. Jordan. He was like the stand-in actor who Michael B. Jordan fought. Not only that, but if you know boxing or if you know the movie, there's a cut man named Stitch. And Stitch is like a famous cut man in the boxing world. He was also the cut man they used for Michael B. Jordan in Creed. So Shane had Stitch working on him as a cut man. He was literally fighting the guy who played the nemesis in Creed. And this was his comeback fight. He was a huge underdog in this fight. Shane came in, dominated this fight, pretty much shut him out, had this massive victory, and he's been undefeated ever since. And now he's the number one, I think it's WBA, he's the number one contender in the world. So he's up for a title shot next. And hopefully we take that Creed story all the way with this next fight. But that was a really special story. And for him, it was a complete reprogramming of the subconscious. And that's, you know, and he'll be the first one to admit it, that's the only way he's gotten to where he is today, because every time previously he was in this situation where it was a high pressure fight, he would just show up as a shell of himself. And now he's dominating. He's showing up as the best version of himself, and it's a night and day performance. So those are a couple stories.
You said something which I think resonated with all of us, was that you can't change what you can't accept. And
that's a good title of this episode.
Yeah.
What you can't accept won't change.
Can't accept what you won't change. And, you know, like, I think one of the greatest days of a man's life is when he finally realizes that everything is his fault and that he's the architect of his own reality. And I think that that is probably the most profound understanding for somebody to really progress forward and be able to move on.
It's basically what he does for a living.
Yeah, that's literally
cool.
what you do. And I think that that's so important for we're a men's mental health podcast to an extent, but for men and women out there, because I'm also sure that you deal with females as well. But it's such an important statement for, I think, all of the viewers and listeners to understand what you just said. And I think going back to what you said with the CEOs and the businessmen and stuff like that, when you have your MMA fighter, okay, forget Deontay Wilder, who couldn't accept it, but now you have this gentleman who looked at himself and he said, you know what? I am beatable. I'm not indestructible. I'm just a man. When you have these, like you said, messiah complexes, and you have gentlemen at the highest rank that have all the money in the world that can do whatever they want, how do you get somebody like that to say, it's all my fault? How do you clean that mind up to where, you know, they're the kings of philanthropy, but they're also out cheating on their wives and neglecting not only all the people around their life, but themselves which is the most important person to not neglect, what is the type of cleaning that you do inside of that mind?
Yeah. And I can only do it when they seek it out, right? And so, and I'm a professional problem solver. So if they want me to solve a problem, I'll do it. And they will only come to me for the most part when there's a problem. As you can imagine, like when people come to me, it's not usually good, right? Like I'm getting the worst of the worst situations. I'm getting, athletes career-ending injury, or, hey, I've, hit over 300 my whole career and I'm hitting 140 so far this year. Like, let's turn around now. Like, it's desperation time. Or I've multiple clients, very successful business people cheating on their wives. Got to figure it out. How do we repair this? I have kids. We need to figure it out right now. And so, of course, the first thing is people have to actually want to do the work. Some people don't. But obviously the people come to me want to do that work. And it's that exact same process, because what I'm doing is I'm uncovering, like, okay, what was being suppressed and repressed before in a way that led to this behavior? Because obviously you're acting out in this way because some of your needs aren't being met. And so maybe you're going to alcohol, maybe you're going to drugs, maybe you're going to women. Whatever you're reaching for is for a reason. You're trying to suppress something that doesn't feel right with you. And so I'm going right there. I'm asking them, what does it feel like in the moment where you feel like you have to go to this? And what it is, a lot of times, it's avoidance. It's like, hey, there's no intimacy in my marriage anymore. And I'm going to suppress this, and I'm just not going to deal with it because I don't want to invest energy there, right? And so, okay, we have to go back there. We have to rebuild that marriage from the ground up. If they want to do that, if that's what they desire, right? Or if they're reaching for drugs or reaching for alcohol, okay, we're going to go cold turkey right now, and then we're going to actually feel everything that comes up when you want to use. We're going to deal with everything that's been suppressed in your life and pushed down, and we're going to allow it to bubble up. We're going to go head first into it. And that's literally what has to happen every single time. There's no other way around it. We have to let it all bubble up. We have to let it become terrifying. This is why it takes so much courage to do this work, because you're going to face it. You're going to face those demons. You're going to go all the way into the darkness, and you're going to come out the other side.
So a lot of people come to you, like you said, when they're at their lowest of the low, right?
Yeah.
What about for the people who are very self-aware, who do the work, who are very self-accepting of their flaws, who already acknowledge that the ego no longer serves them, and now they just want to go on to the next level? Do you get clients who are completely on the steadfast path, that stay steady in the storm, that accept that they can find comfort in the chaos and that this is who they are? They're good people, they're regimented people, they're self-aware people, they're not people that are suffering from any conflictions and convictions. What do you do with those guys?
Well, I'd say this, generally speaking, everyone I'm working with is extremely successful. So, my book's called Programmed to Fail. Most of these people have been programmed to succeed in some really major ways. It's just that they're facing like a very demanding problem in their life where the way they have been programmed to fail has come to the surface. So, regardless of how good your genetics are or how smart you are to build a successful business or to get into professional sports, like you have to have the routines, you have to be regimented, you have to have a high level of self-awareness. So they do actually usually have all those things, but it's more so that something very pressing has come up in their life and they're like, I need to solve this problem now. That's, I would say, 95% of my clients. But then recently I have this dude, he's a team captain for an NFL team. This dude does all the charity work you can imagine. Like, I think he was a run-up for the Walter Payton Award. Like, he's just an incredible human. And he did come to me to just get better. And that's actually extremely rare. And I joke about it with him that I'm like, this is crazy that you're coming out when things are going so good. And that's like incredible for me to have those clients, because then I get to elevate them to the next level. Because even this guy being so successful, being so good-hearted, being such a great dude in so many ways, this dude, for example, he's suffering more from like the nice guy syndrome, right? And so he's trying to do things on a nonprofit space that, coming from this, a little bit more of like an unhealthy, instead of being fully in the integrated masculine, they come from a little bit of this, unhealthy feminine energy of just wanting to please everyone and being the nice guy. And because of that, even though he's a great dude, everyone loves him, it's going to cause issues for his nonprofit he's trying to be successful excellence. But even those people who come so dialed in, just like the picture of a great person, picture of success, I'm going to find ways in which they're not showing up to their full capacity, because we all have it. We all have the human experience. There's going to be unlocks for every one of us from one degree to another.
Do you think that the way you go about speaking to these athletes and the celebrities, you'd be able to like dial down the same theory with the emotional frequency on a lower level to like your average everyday guy? Like, one of the things I have so many things going through my head because I just wasn't expecting this episode to be about this kind of. I thought it was more like, I kind of just wing the episodes. These guys do more of like the research. I just show up, and this is awesome because I thought it was going to be more of like manifesting, which I've grown a pretty successful, I'm not a 9-digit CEO, but a very successful company. And I've been manifesting since I was a kid, very spiritual. And I always speak about the emotional frequency because I believe if that's what you're putting out and you can envision, then when it happens, you're already used to it. And I had a really successful mentor that passed away, and he would explain to me, like, if you're grinding for 2 years straight and you finally get your first little win, go buy a dinner and celebrate and feel that energy of the celebration to uplift that subconscious of you just busting your ass the last 2 years. And then up it to, maybe one day you buy a nice watch or a house or a car or start a family, and you're subconsciously raising your frequency without realizing it. And I've talked to people and they kind of just like look at me like I'm fucking crazy. But the way that you describe it, it really is pretty eye-opening. This being a men's mental health focused podcast, like I think a lot of guys out there using this, like even just like, let's just say coming off like a suicide. I feel like a lot of guys' problems and women, but people's problems is accepting, right, what they have to change and their ego telling them, no, it's not that, mixed with the emotional frequency that you're talking about. Because a lot of people just think it's the frequency around them and it's the people they're around. It has nothing to do with that. It's that internal, you even related it to the right chakra. And like, with all that being said, how would you, if you had a piece of advice, someone just tried killing themselves and they're checking in and they really are better and they're just all over the fucking place. With the celebrity mindset that you use, what's a piece of advice that you could give them to just start with either A, checking in with themselves and accepting what's wrong, or starting on that frequency? Like, how can you relate the successful book that you wrote to just a normal Joe Schmo that's not a big time guy and just wants to change?
So the first exercise I would give them to put them on this path, I know you guys talk a lot about this, is the path of awareness. And I give them some exercises to start to step into awareness, because to even talk about emotional frequency and to understand what frequency you want to live in, you need to know what frequency you are in right now. So the exercise would start with set alarms on your phone every 3 hours. Just ask yourself, how are you feeling? How are you feeling? Not a story about how you're feeling, but how are you feeling? Because most people want to go, well, this thing happened to me. No, don't play that game. Go right to the feeling, right? Don't go into the mental story of good or bad and this is why I feel. No, go right to the feeling. So that's how we start to build that awareness and actually write it down every time the emotion comes up. All right, alarm goes off. I'm feeling anxious. Okay, cool. Let's just be aware of it. Don't try to fix it. Do that for a week. Let another week go by. Do the alarms again. This time, ask yourself, what am I feeling? And ask yourself, what was I focused on right before that feeling emerged? Then the person can start to actually see how it is their fault, right? How their focus drives their feelings. Oh, I notice when I'm focused on complaining about this thing, I feel pissed off. Oh, wait, I created that feeling of pissed off. I'm doing that with my focus, right? Versus, oh, I'm focused on I don't have enough yet. Versus like looking around and seeing what you do have. And when you do that, you feel grateful instead, right? So just noticing how your focus creates your feeling, right? We're awakening now. The third week, set the alarms again. This time, if the alarm goes off and you feel good, you're good, right? You're aware, You feel good, move on with your life. If the alarm goes off, you feel bad, ask yourself, what was I focused on right before that feeling emerged? And then flip your focus. And so we're given the opportunity to, in real time, take back control of their mind over their focus, which is creating the feeling that they're having. And so just flip it to the opposite. So if you're looking around in your house and you're going, oh man, my TV is too small, and you're focused on that, and you're feeling like less than, or like, whatever negative emotion comes with that. The opposite is, oh, well, I have a TV. I get to watch a football game. I have a TV. Cool. Gratitude. So that'd be flipping it, right? That's some very just simple bro things that you could do that I would tell like a normal person. And that's going to just put them on the path, understanding one, emotional frequency. What is it? Well, it's how you feel right now. That's what it is. So they can become aware of the higher frequencies and the lower frequencies that come up. Two, be aware of how they create that frequency through their focus. And then three, give them the opportunity to flip their focus in real time to create a new feeling, and how they can perpetuate this high emotional frequency by simply flipping their focus in real time. So that's exactly what I give to just the average Joe.
That's simple.
That was a fucking awesome answer, bro. I wish it was shorter so we could just make a reel of it and just fucking. That was perfect.
I
really appreciate that.
It's where you put your energy is where you're either, and what kind of energy you put is where you're going to reap or sow your highest reward or your lowest detriment. And I think that's exactly what you're doing by helping them flip the script on that. So do you do any also of these? Because one of the ways that I get familiar with myself is I do mindfulness, which has a whole different variety of subcategories to it. But I like to do body scans constantly, and I do those 3 times a day. So rather than the alarms, because I'm in a sales position and I'm constantly irritated throughout the day, and I know this, but I'm very good at allowing myself to feel my irritation from an external factor. But I'll sit with myself, I'll body scan, I'll go from my hands to my arms to my shoulders to my chest to my torso to my legs down to my feet. I breathe into my body. I accept what's coming. Do you do any of those type of exercises with your clients as well, where you're also tying in the body into these into your tips of mindfulness and to being aware, or do you strictly stick with what's going on in the mind?
When I talk about feeling an emotion, actually I'm talking about feeling it in the body and not from the head, right? So the focus, I think, is more from the head. I'd say, yeah, where is your focus from the head directed? The feeling, though, is always in the body. Like I said, kind of my gift is I can actually feel what's going on in my clients' bodies emotionally, and I help them kind of feel that too. I'm like, okay, you notice that whenever you get worried about something in the future, your solar plexus and your body starts to tighten up. You feel that? Oh, yeah. Yeah, right? So that's a big part of what I'm training people on, is being able to feel that in their body and recognize it, and so they can feel the difference. Because once we let it go through the techniques that I do and kind of my specific modalities, because everybody has the ways they like to teach this type of stuff. So I have my way. It's like, it's my hammer. It gets the nail on the board. So I teach what I teach the way I teach it because it's effective for me. But there's many ways to do this, right? Ultimately, what are we talking about? We're talking about the alchemization of emotion to get you into a higher frequency. So you're living in the heart and you're present. And if you're there, if you're in the heart, you're present. Doesn't matter how you get there. You're going to be money. Whether you're a wide receiver that's going out and trying to catch touchdown passes, or you're a guy who's making sales calls and you want to be in that pocket, in that flow state, in that zone, feeling like every word that you're saying is gold coming off your mouth,
So thoughts are a language of the brain and feelings are a language of the body is kind of awesome.
100%.
Do you deal with any skepticism from people before they sit down with you? And if you do, how do you deal with the skepticism? Because I assume you got a lot of people that, especially ones that I've spoken to, and I'm sure that, Taylor and Mike both have, where they just feel that this manifestation is just a bunch of nonsense, and a lot of them are professional victims and living in the past, and they live in this preconditioned Skinner's box matrix. So how do you deal with the skepticism, and what kind of skepticism have you actually endured?
I'm pretty good at NLP, so I'm very good at appealing to people's senses and making what I do make sense to the language they need me to speak to them, whether that's like auditory or through explaining things through visuals in their mind or just the emotions. So I'm good at reading people and then explaining them, feeding it to them how they need to receive it, right? Like, you know, if I'm working with a 55-year-old lesbian woman in the corporate scene, it's going to be a lot different than I'm talking to a 20-year-old MMA fighter from the hood, right? It's a completely different way that I'm going to be approaching and talking to them. So a lot of it comes down to just like the language and the way I'm explaining things, and that just comes down to my intuition of how do I want to explain these things to these people. And I find that, yeah, it usually computes to people because I'm just thinking of like, all right, how can I relate something that they would already know and it makes sense to them? Like I was speaking to this like luxury real estate group the other day doing a workshop, and I was like, okay, a lot of these people have no history in this world of emotional frequency or manifestation or any of that stuff. Like it's completely foreign to them. So I was like, how do I line up with them? I'm like, okay, guys, I work with Major League Baseball players. They get on hitting streaks. But why? Why do they get on hitting streaks? What is that? Let's talk about it. Like they're not more experienced or more skilled and we're not on a hitting streak. So what is it? They're tapping into this emotional frequency that goes beyond our rational ability to explain it. But they're tapping into some kind of frequency that allows them to be in this hitting streak. And you people in real estate, you know that time in your life where like leads are just flowing into like crazy. Like all the leads are coming in, and for some reason these sales are they're just crushing. You know, they're so easy for you to find buyers for the places you're listing. You know, we have that feeling, and like everyone can actually relate. They go, you know what? Like it doesn't make rational sense why sometimes the leads flow so well. It feels like I'm always doing the same things, but sometimes they flow and sometimes they don't. Just like the baseball player, sometimes they're in that pocket, in that flow state. And so what I explained to them was we can actually train ourselves to be in that high emotional frequency, to access those states, to make the hitting streak something that is automatic for the baseball player, so you can access that on demand. And for you in real estate, being able to be in that state where you're going to get lots of leads, you're going to be able to sell with a lot more ease. And so for them, I was like, oh, yeah, that made sense. So that's what I'm always trying to do. I'm trying to understand the individual, what their goals are, and how can I relate what I do from a level of authority to them in a way that's going to make sense. And if I can do that, then I can get over the woo-woo factor, because a lot of them, yeah, like if I just explain, hey man, I'm just going to do magic energy stuff on you, they'd be like, you're full of shit. So I have to relate it to them personally. And yeah, usually people are receptive. And I think the tide is turning, you know, with psychedelics and stuff coming on board, being a major part of just like peak performance in general, mindfulness, yoga classes, sound baths, all that stuff. I think people are getting a little more open to it.
You could be a little weird, could be into it. Do you use going like the spiritual route of those frequencies? Do you ever schedule anything around like the moon cycles, or use sage or herbs, or do you incorporate any of that into the practices? Because I've done that in the past, and especially with the manifesting, and I swear by it. I'm just curious if you ever used anything like that in the practices.
I'm just not skilled enough, I guess, with like the moons and stuff like that. There's an app pattern. I kind of like to look at it, and just it basically says, you know, where the moons are at and what it's supposed to mean, and like gives you your daily prescription. I just think that stuff's interesting. Like I went from believing in nothing to like believing in everything. And so I'm always looking for the synchronicities from the universe to just like give me signals. But, you know, like when I'm with my clients, I've got like my sage and eucalyptus. If shit's getting heated in the session, I'm like, oh, this person's releasing some demons. I light this up. You know, I circulate that around. Like, I like it. I bring sacredness to every container that I'm creating. So this definitely doesn't like have any like concrete benefit. It's more about when I do my work, like I'm going from like talking like a bro to someone, especially like a lot of my clients kind of overlap between like friends and clients. So I have to set the container. So I'll do things like I light a candle, you know, maybe I'll light the sage eucalyptus. I have this like bee honey eucalyptus spray. I'm like, all right, spray this, smell your hands, close your eyes, drop into the present moment. So I'm not doing any of those things from like believing they have some kind of specific benefit, more so than I'm using them to set a container for the session and what the work we're about to do. You know, like you guys have already done a lot of psychedelics, you know that set and setting are so important. It's the same thing for my work. I use them more for that.
That's what the setting is. That's why I was asking for, especially like with the moon. They say typically a new moon is like it's better for creating the manifest and the frequency, and then on the full moon, it's better to close out the negativity that you were manifesting to make room for the next new moon of, replacing whatever you closed out. And it's kind of that continuous cycle 13 times a year that I've been doing it for a decade. And I think you find the new moon typically creates a higher frequency because you're creating, and a full moon typically is a lower frequency because it's the negative that you're clearing out. So I was going to follow up with a question if you ever noticed that certain clients come to you at certain parts of the month, but I'd be interested if we touch base a couple months from now and you maybe track the moon and see if certain people reach out to you at a certain way.
That's a good idea.
That would be really interesting.
I've mentored, not celebrities, but I definitely mentored a couple dozen people in my time, and you'll find that the moon cycle has a lot more to do with it than you think. And I'd just be curious on your level if you notice that.
Yeah, I've never tracked it, but I think that's very interesting. And I'm always curious about everything and to find those correlations, because everything is cyclical to some degree, right? We have the seasons, and I'm a big proponent of just like seasons, not necessarily the moon cycles, but like just paying attention to the season of life you're in right now, right? Because it's not always going to be spring, right? We're going to go through winter at some point. And so I pay attention to those things. I talk about those a lot in the coaching practice I do. Is like, like one of my guys, he had to get Tommy John surgery in the beginning of this past season. I'm like, bro, you're going into winter. It's summer for everyone else. It's winter for you. And just being in acceptance of that season that you're in, it's like, it's going to be dark. It's going to be cold, spiritually, if you will, as they go through that kind of like tough time. And so I think everyone has to be aware of the season that they're in. And so you can kind of align your expectation, understanding like, maybe you just close out some business. And you're like, you know what? I'm starting over again with something. Okay, well, don't expect everything to happen overnight. I understand that things run in seasons. So if this is winter, like let's put in the work in the winter, and hopefully we'll be able to reap some of those rewards in the spring. But I think just like maybe the moon kind of gives you that sense of like acceptance and surrender around like, okay, that's why things aren't flowing now, or I can anticipate they will. Only put some more energy in it this time. I think being aware of those seasons and the cyclical cycle of the seasons can help do that as well.
It's true.
You said that you went, this might be a little bit of a deeper question, but you said that you went from believing in nothing to now believing in everything. So what was the catalyst for that? Because him and I were both raging atheists at one point. I can't speak for Taylor, but I know he's finding his way now. How? Like everyone has a different story, and I'm super intrigued to understand exactly what your story is. So you went from nothing to this guy. How? Where is that stepping stone forward, and what is that catalyst to projectile you and catapult you into this position to where it was dejected and devoid to now abundant and fulfilled?
Yeah, I think growing up without any sense of God, any idea of God was a big part of it. My mom was more of like the masculine leader in our family. My parents were together, but she was more of like the masculine leader, and she was the atheist. So I just kind of like latched onto that from her, and just like, oh yeah, it's like silly. And I lived in New York till I was 12, and that, before that time, nobody's really talking about God. I mean, we never went to church or anything. My dad's Jewish, but never spoke about God. Like, we never went to temple or anything. I never was bar mitzvahed. Then we moved to Eugene, Oregon when I was 12, across the country, one of the most liberal cities in the entire country, where I didn't know anyone who believed in God. So it's just like, obviously that's silly. right? And then I think once I started down the path of exploring these alternative modalities, it kind of just like opened up my mind to believing in something greater. It's like, well, where is all this energy coming from, and how is this working? And just started making me ask a lot more questions. And I think it was very gradual. Then I started in my, early 20s, experimenting, with psychedelics, mushrooms, LSD, things of that nature. That started opening up my mind even more. Then, at that point, I'm starting to talk about the universe, that first phase where you're just like, yeah, the universe, man, the universe. And then I smoked a toad, the Bufo 5-MeO DMT, and I did that when I was 27, I think, 28, somewhere in there. And once I did that was my awakening. I had that full ego death, and it was undeniable to me that God was real. And I'll tell you, I had this crazy experience. I actually have a video of it, which makes it even crazier because you usually don't get to capture this stuff on video, where so I had this Bufo experience. Okay, God is real, 100%. I'm integrating and going through all my reprogramming process, all the stuff I'm talking about, how I do with other people. My mentor, my sensei, was teaching me how to do it on myself. So this is my incubation period when I was doing all this stuff on myself, doing the reprogramming. At the same time, kind of building that deeper belief in God, starting to actually be able to say the word God, getting rid of all the programming around God, right? All the guilt, the shame, the looking down upon it, and reprogram myself to be empowered and have this beautiful relationship with God. And then a few months later, I was like, all right, I know I experienced something. I was calling it the oneness. I was like, I was tapped into the oneness, this feeling, this being in communion with God. And so I did a large mushroom dose just by myself in my apartment, and I'm videotaping myself trying to, go through the veil, coming back through, trying to bring back the information, bring back the gold. And then I just hear this crack from behind me, and I feel this big wave of energy just go vroom from behind me. And I just whip my head around, and I look behind me, and I have this photo on my wall that said, "You're exactly where you need to be." And it lifted up and off of the nail and plopped down right on the symbol of the oneness, just like the one I have behind me here, except it was a much smaller photo. And I was like, "You're exactly where you need to be, in the oneness." And at that moment, it was just like, all right, that's like God winking at me. I was like, I get it. I can stop seeking now. Like, I'm a full believer. And from that point forward, I've taken plant medicines and just have many beautiful spiritual experiences that have deepened my belief in my personal relationship with God.
Something that I've been doing, which I think this is news for them, and as well as for anyone listening to this who I have not helped yet, but I've been doing meditative mushroom guidance trips with people now. And I've been guiding them on trips where they're doing about anywhere from 2 to 4 grams and walking them into that realm and that ethereal plane for them to face all of these things that they have buried down, and like you said, crossing that veil. So as somebody who's quite well versed in this psychedelic renaissance, and as Taylor has called it, a psychedelic explorer, do you feel, actually, you know what? Would you recommend using them to your clients? And do you recommend using them to your clients? And do you do any mushroom therapies with your clients? And for the viewers listening who are nervous to cross that veil and have these preconceived notions as to you're playing with fire, what advice could you give them in their potential interest in traveling into that realm?
Yeah. So I'd never felt comfortable guiding anything or creating a container for it in the past. Up until this past year, I found this incredible plant medicine. It's called acacia. Have you guys heard of it?
Yeah, but yes.
I haven't. Please explain.
Have you experienced acacia?
I have never taken it yet, no, but I know all about it.
Wow. The most incredible and gentle plant medicine I've ever come in contact with. And so actually just this past Friday, I hosted my first ceremony where I brought in some of my clients flew in to be part of Container. And I wasn't guiding it. There's a woman, she's been a psychologist for 20 years. She was also like a professional tennis player, awesome lady, but she's the leader. And we also have like another woman there who sings. She has a voice of an angel, because the music is such a big important part of that type of ceremony as well. So I recently hosted that, and that was incredible. And I really just hadn't felt comfortable previously introducing my clients to psychedelics. Not that I haven't had great experiences myself, but it's just because they can go, like, I'm not trying to scare anyone, but like, you can have a bad trip. And it's not something that's to be scared of, necessarily to be scared or afraid of, because your bad trip is usually you facing the stuff that you need to face, like it kind of needs to happen. But with that being said, the acacia is just so gentle. The spirit behind it, it's DMT. So you're getting that, it can be very powerful, but it's just very gentle as well. So all I like to say is the first plant medicine I've really felt comfortable, because a lot of people who are coming into these containers have no experience with anything. And so I want them to have a gentle experience, but a powerful experience. So that's the one that I just did my first one. It was incredible, and I definitely will be doing more. I live part-time down in Medellin, Colombia, and I'm building a retreat center down there. So that's a big part of my vision, is to bring clients down there. It's going to be a place for refuge, for people to have that experience in nature. And then, people who are considering it, who maybe have trepidation around it, I truly believe that these things call to you. So if you're feeling the call or hearing the call, answer it, even if there's fear there, because everyone is afraid of the unknown. And what we're talking about is like the epitome of the unknown. What is it? Where am I going? What's going to happen? Well, you're not going to die. Maybe your ego will, but you are not going to die. So the worst that can happen is that you're going to come out the other side. It's kind of like skydiving, It's like, seems absolutely terrifying, but you come out the other side, you're like, oh yeah, nobody dies doing this. It's more dangerous to get in my car and drive home every day. Like, you're going to be fine, and you're going to be much more stronger for the experience. And if you do the work afterwards, especially to integrate what comes through in that, it's going to be one of the most productive experiences of your life. And I think there's a lot of studies that say that, right? A lot of people who take mushrooms, especially they ran those studies of people who were like close to death, right? And they gave them mushrooms to kind of calm them about death. They said it was the most enlightening experience of their life. So these are beautiful experiences, or sacred experiences. I highly recommend them if someone's feeling the call to them. And don't let fear hold you back from having that experience. It's one thing that you're like, you know what? It's not a time in my life for this. Like, I just don't feel it. That's one thing. But if you feel the call and you're just afraid because of the unknown, you should answer that call. So that's what I have to say about that.
That's beautiful.
Yeah, man, that's good.
It's So I want to go into this retreat for a second. Is this your end goal, fulfilled passion? Is this what you've always wanted to do, where you can open up a retreat in the countryside, in nature, have your plant medicines? Are you opening it up to the high-level CEOs and the professional athletes? Are you opening it up to everybody? What is your vision for this? Are you looking to entwine the average Joes with the highest of the highs and make sure that everybody feels that they're at one and they're equal with one another in a place like that? What is your intention behind it?
Yeah, I mean, I truly believe everyone's equal. So there could be pro athletes there, and then, call them average Joes, just regular people. And I definitely will have them in the same containers, because what I want to do is just bring good people together in sacred containers. And so is that my end vision? I think it's always just expanding, I always just try to follow my inspiration in the present moment. My dream is what I'm doing now is coaching professional athletes. I work with a guy on the Jets. I grew up a Jets fan in New York. It's that's my dream. I'm literally living my dream right now. So, once I start working with the Knicks, that'll be another part of the dream fulfilled. It's just like these childhood dreams all coming true, and they all have in many ways. So it's just about, okay, what do I feel inspired to next? Well, for me, I just happened to fall in love with Colombia and the nature there. I want to be there anyway. I live, down in Fort Lauderdale area, just north of Miami, and I like it here a lot, but I'm really a nature guy. Like, I do so much better just in the forest. And so I want to be there. So for me, it just makes sense to build this place out and bring people there into this refuge that I already want to be in, and create these sacred places where we get to have these transformative experiences. And I want it to be like family, like I want my family to be there and to share these spaces with these people, and to have this all going through this collective experience and kind of expanding out, people in my circle, friends, family, clients. I want to have all those types of people there, just people I want to spend time with, and inviting them down. So there's no, like, I guess there's not like a standard or something you have to hit to get for me to want to invite you there. I think it's just a matter of, like, are you in my circle, right? And that could just be, hey, you reached out, we worked together, and you're one of my clients, we vibe, great, I'd love to have you.
By the way, Fort Lauderdale is infinitely better than Miami. I just want to say that. Yeah. We got Los Solos Boulevard down there. I love Fort Lauderdale. So if you have, Mike asked you a question about what tools can you offer somebody, and you gave them the every 3 hours check-in with yourself, right? Yep. So you're going to have a lot of people that are going to watch this episode and listen to it on Spotify or watch the video on YouTube. So you have somebody who's watching, and with the exception of that, okay, let's say they do check in with themselves. Let's say that it's somebody who wants to take the next step in their life and excel into an entrepreneurship type field. Let's say it's just somebody who's struggling to get over something in their past. Let's say it's somebody who's let's say it's us. Let's say it's us, and we want to make this podcast the most well-known podcast for men's mental health in the entire country. What advice would you give these types of people that are listening, or like us, who really want, who believe in our passion, who believe in our mission, who believe in our goal? What could you offer us as in tools to move forward, to take the next step, and to excel to where we not only feel, but we believe we're destined to be?
I'd say it all starts with your focus of your focus, focusing your focus, right? Like, if we are vessels for this higher power that's running through us, and our focus is where our energy is going, right? What we focus on, what we get. Wherever we focus, that's where energy is being fed. Understanding that the more directions your focus is being spread in, the less potent your energy is going to be. Especially when you're trying to start something new. You talked about, like, someone starting entrepreneurship, or you guys getting into a place where, this is your 11th episode. Okay, you want to be the biggest mental health podcast in the world. In that fragile time when you're starting something new, it's just making your focus as potent as possible and shutting down as many distractions as you can, and trying to really dial in and just be absolutely relentless with this narrow focus. And if you read the book, then you know a little bit about my story and what I was able to do in the fitness space on YouTube. And we were able to build a 1 million subscriber channel with 100 million plus views by being just relentlessly focused. I shut down everything in my life. And before that, I had 5 or 6 businesses I was trying to do and being successful in none of them. And I shut everything down. I just understood the power of a narrow focus. And so when people, come to me, friends, and want advice, and they're like, I have all these ideas. I'm like, you have to some degree, pick the main idea and just go in on it. Even me. So, like, I had my other company acquired, only a year and a half ago, and started those negotiations around 2 years ago. And so making this transition, like, things have happened very quickly for me in regards to the caliber of athlete I've been able to work with here in the mental performance space. Like, of course, the overnight success has been 15, 16 years in this field to get here. But at the same time, it's happened quickly because it's like, what was my focus? Only one thing. It was to work one-on-one with professional athletes. That was my one focus, one. And I always look at it, like I look at my priorities and I'm like, my work priorities. I'm like, I have one focus, right? And when I wrote my book, the book was the main number one focus. And then it was serving my current clients. And then it was finding new clients. But it was really just staying in that lane of one-on-one clients. So for you guys wanting to grow this show, it's just like, how relentlessly focused can you be? Like, what are all the ways that you could make it the absolute best it could be? Because like when you have less things to think about, all your energy just gets funneled into this one area. Like that's how we were able to get YouTube videos with millions of views, because all of our energy was just being poured into this one direction every day. My mind is constantly being fed just like, what about this? What about this? Idea. Most of them weren't good, but the fact that my mind got to just focus on one thing allowed us to have the ideas to find the things that were going to work. And so anyone trying to start something new, anyone who has a passion, that really want to pursue it, like I'm not even necessarily going to say just like burn the boats, which is what I did. I did burn the boats, but I'm just going to say make the main thing the main thing, and understand how powerful your focus is when it's narrow.
I think that's a really good answer. You like talking to my reborn mentor. He used to say, a lot of people say you fill up 7 cups, and a little bit of in every cup. When I changed the mindset of filling up the 1 cup, and then when it overflows, you can use the overflow for the 2nd cup, and then the overflow of the 2nd cup can fill the 3rd cup, and that tunnel vision is a great piece of advice. And you kind of just said it yourself with the 1 goal will trickle into the 2nd and the 3rd. But without focusing on that first goal, you're just scattered with 10 goals going nowhere. I thought that was a really good answer.
Yeah. Everybody knows someone like that, right? Just like the start and stop. But you can, if you've been really successful in one thing, like you can move on to other things, right? Like, yeah, Elon Musk did PayPal. Oh, now he could go work on Tesla. Now you can go work on X. Like he's already overflowed and filled up those cups. But you have to understand when you're there and have that awareness to know when you can start to pour that new focus into something.
Brandon, thank you so much for this episode, man. I appreciate it. If you could, as we're signing off, give our viewers any last bit of information, waking up tomorrow morning, okay, because this episode is not going to air by tomorrow, but when they do listen to this episode and they're waking up the very next day, how do they start their day? What's the one thing they can implement as soon as they wake up in the morning to develop a new mindset and start their new trajectory to be a better version of themselves?
Yeah. It's going to seem cliche, but it's what I do every day. And it's just, you're laying in bed, God, thank you so much for my health, my family, our health, the abundance we have, the bed that I'm waking up in, this house, getting to do this work, just counting your blessings every day when you wake up. Because what does that do? Put you in the frequency of abundance. What attracts abundance? Abundance. So that's what I do every day, and that'd be my recommendation.
Thank you, Brandon. We're gonna plug your information in at the end of the episode. That way we can have people follow you, reach out to you. We're gonna plug your book in as well. And I hope that everyone that was listening to this episode winds up coming to you and utilizing you. And I hope that we're able to reach a whole new skew of people. That way everybody's getting helped in all different facets. Brandon, thank you so much, man. I appreciate all the tips, the advice, and I'm sure you're going to change a lot more people's lives.
Thanks a lot. I really appreciated the episode. It was very
Look,
nice.
will you be absolutely genuine with me? No deception, please. I want you to do something that expresses you without the slightest deception.